Hello, this is Joseph Gillette with Venture Capital Cross, coming to you with a short video about regulation in private markets and specifically in venture capital. So my firm that I'm registered with is called Cova Capital Partners, LLC. It's registered in New York State, in Long Island, in Syosset, actually. And a broker-dealer is an entity which is a FINRA member, and it's registered with the SEC. There's thousands of broker dealers, and they do all kinds of different business. So when you buy stock at Robinhood, that's a broker dealer. So is Goldman Sachs, the investment bank, and many broker dealers do many different types of businesses. And a broker dealer will register their business lines with FINRA. Venture funds are not registered broker dealers, and typically the people who work for venture funds are not registered. Well, why is that? So what's the difference between an agent and a principal? So an agent is a broker as an individual or as an entity, but in this example, let's say it's a person, let's say it's me. So I have a buyer, and the buyer is looking for Databricks shares. So I find a seller and I connect these two parties. I am not a principal to the transaction. That means I'm not the buyer and I'm not the seller. I am the agent that is organizing this transaction, such as matching buyers and sellers, similar to a real estate agent. So everyone's familiar with real estate. You can use that example, and private equity and venture capital are very similar in that regards. So the agent is not the buyer and the agent is not the seller. That's the easiest way to understand it. The agent is an intermediary, but he's also doing things such as paperwork. He can help the buyer or the seller or both with various settlement features. So there's a lot of things that the agent can do. But the key difference is that he's not the actual owner of the asset which is being exchanged. It's another way to look at it. He's not the owner of the transaction. The venture capital firms are the owners. So when they're investing $1 million into Uber or Airbnb in the seed stage, they're receiving shares in return. So they are the owner. So they are the buyer or the seller. So you don't need to be registered to be a principal. Otherwise, every startup would have to be registered. It would be ridiculous. So if you broker a transaction, registration is required. And there's a little bit of a gray area for people who work at venture firms. If you're acting as a finder or an intermediary, that can be kind of a gray area if you're not a broker dealer or registered rep with a broker dealer. So for this reason, many reps have chosen, or individuals have chosen to become registered reps of broker dealers who specialize in venture funding and venture financing. But more traditionally, there's been a relationship between investment banks and the venture capital markets, which has been very symbiotic, and they work good together because what happens with private companies, let's say at the early stage, they get funding from the investors, but then over time, they may need a broker dealer or an investment bank to do a more traditional Series A, Series B, Series C funding round, which is more of an investment banking role than a venture capital role. And then as time goes on, of course, they're going to need functions such as cap table management, which would be a transfer agent. Transfer agent is also usually a broker dealer, such as Carta is a broker dealer, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, if they're going to go public, they would need a investment bank, which is probably a broker dealer, to help them with the registration of their shares to become public, which is also colloquially known as IPO. And so there are many things that the broker dealers add a lot of value. It's not a sales type of role, although that can be included in it. But there's a lot of things going on in private markets that are not so simple like it seems on the outside. When you put a deal together, even if it's a very simple deal, you have to have an investment document that is the agreement between the issuer, who is the company raising funds, and the investor who is investing. You have to have a cap table system. So as you're taking investors and you're issuing them shares, you have to keep all of that organized, and that is known as the cap table. And there are a lot of things going on you do have obviously obligation to your shareholders, because shareholders have shareholder rights, and they should, because they've given you their hard-earned money in exchange for hopefully some return on their investment. But they're putting their faith in you. So the regulations lie out that companies have to follow certain rules regarding shareholders. You can't just throw them under the bus. They have rights to information. They can request books and records, things like that. They can vote on matters where the board would be involved. The board represents the shareholders. So there's a lot of things going on here, a lot of moving parts. And so the broker-dealers can create a lot of value. The venture funds typically just focus on investing, and that's it. Now, some of them are a little more proactive, and they'll have a board seat, and they'll get into the weeds and help founders grow. And some of them even advertise like why you should work with our venture fund versus their competitors is because they can help you in some of these things. But nonetheless, there's a very symbiotic relationship between broker-dealers and the venture capital community, which is too deep to get into in this short video. But that's basically the difference between an agent and a principal. Is the venture funds and the issuers are the actual principals in the transaction. That means the exchange of equity is going to be between the investors and the company that is issuing shares. And those are the principals, and that does not require registration. We hope you've enjoyed this short explanation, and we will provide more videos on the Venture Capital Cross portal. You can go there by vccross.com, and anybody who registers is going to get a free paperback copy of this book, which is basically an investing guidebook for private markets, Investor's Guide to Legal Insider Trading. And we'll mail this to you if you register an account. No economics necessary. You don't have to buy anything. Just register for the site and tell us if you like it, and we'll send you the book. We look forward to seeing you in future videos.